What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Vitamin C's with me, your boy Adam Taylor. And as usual, I'm joined by my homie, my compadre, my co-host in crime, Mr. Tim Shields. What's popping, Tim?
Not much, man. Start of the work week. Unfortunately, it's Tuesday. I always hate like the beginning of the week because it's like trying to get into a rhythm, and it's hard. Honestly, there's no basketball going on right now, but at least the Celtics are starting to make a little bit of like moves leading up to training camp and preseason. We're talking about Noah Vonleh today. Never thought
We
we'd be
are
talking about
talking
Noah
about Noah
Vonleh.
Vonleh, and
I
I'm
didn't think
going to
we'd be
say this
talking about him.
straight up. I'm going to say this straight up. As somebody that's literally ingrained in basketball 24/7, there is always something to talk about. It's just whether people are willing to listen or not. That's the difference, you know. Me, I could talk about things all day long, but it's going to bore the pants off some people. So, well, we do have something good to talk about today. We have Noah Vonleh. I know some other people are going to be like, "What about Bruno Caboclo?"
We
Bruno
don't talk about
Caboclo,
we don't
but
talk about Bruno.
we don't talk about Bruno. I don't expect him to be on the team once training camp ends, especially now Vonleh has been picked up as well. I've kind of been of the belief that the Celtics are going to go into the season with at least one open roster spot. One of the things that is often forgotten is you can acquire a guy off waivers using a trade exception. So they might choose to keep that roster spot open heading towards the trade deadline. So if somebody does get waived and Stevens and Udoka think they can fit, then there is a potential chance that you can all of a sudden use one of those exceptions to swoop in and pick somebody up off waivers. Which means I do believe that Noah Vonleh could be the guy that is going to be getting he signed that deal. It's not an Exhibit 10 as reported by Keith Smith. I do think he's got a legitimate chance of making this roster.
Do we actually get any kind of details? I know it's a 1 year contract, but without looking, I haven't heard anything of whether or not it's like fully guaranteed. My guess is that it's non-guaranteed, like in its entirety. But as you said, it's not a two-way contract. It's not a 10-day or Exhibit 10. This is straight out right. They're just signing him. And I mean, this is the last time he was in the NBA was the 2020-2021 season with Brooklyn. Only played a handful of games. And then other than that, he was playing with the Shanghai Sharks, I believe was where he was before this. So, I mean, he was playing professionally, but this is a guy who was a lottery pick back in 2014, 14-15 rather. He was 19 years old, played for Charlotte, drafted ninth overall. And the big part of why a lot of people are even talking about him as much, he was a Massachusetts native, was from Haverhill. So he's from Massachusetts. So it's kind of like a cool sort of coming home story, similar to like what it would be like if Nerlens Noel signed with the Celtics or something like that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you need to remember as well with Vanley is the fact that he can play two positions. You can play him at the 4, you can play him at the 5. He's got good size, good length. Defensively, he's quite sturdy. You're not going to be asking him to switch onto the perimeter, but as a weak side help guy, he's quite valuable. As a guy that can kind of anchor the paint and drop, you can utilize him there too. The biggest issue for me was his offensive game never grew from when he entered the league to when he kind of fell out of the league. His offense never seemed to take a leap. There was some valuable attempts in terms of like extending his range. On his career, he's shooting 30.8% from deep. Now, over his career, that's been around about 0.5 attempts per game. But at least that teams were asking him to start trying to build out, and that never really came to fruition. He's at a career average at 4.9 points a game. I'm just not sure he's ever going to be somebody that's going to come off the bench and get you buckets, but he's definitely somebody that can come off the bench and slot into what Boston do defensively and be able to start playing a role as like a third or fourth big in the rotation that can come in and give you spot minutes and keep that defense ticking along.
I'm interested to see like how exactly he's gonna mesh here, though. I mean, Boston right now, they're thin at the center spot, and you made a really good point. He can play the 4 or the 5. And for Boston right now, after trading Daniel Theis, they could use another big body in there. And he's not exactly old either. He's going to be turning, I think by the end of August, he's going to be 27. So you're talking about a former lottery pick. This is very much a buy low move, very low risk, low cost. And who knows, maybe Boston finds another rotation guy. Maybe it's someone who can eat 10, 15 minutes on any given night. But either way, it's just a matter of having another body, and they need the size. Like right now, outside of Rob and Al, they're a smaller group, so they need to be able to have someone that they can throw out there at least to get some kind of run.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting him to play 10, 15 minutes a night unless there's injury issues. All I'm concerned about is when you've got Luke Cornett as your primary backup center, all of a sudden you've got some competition there. And I think that's important. You don't want to leave somebody like Cornett that can be a liability at times. There's a very specific type of defense that you run with him, which is drop. You don't want to leave him without somebody breathing down his neck behind him, right? So bringing in someone like Vonleh that's fairly athletic, has good size, solid wingspan, as I said, can give you a little bit as a help side defender, can give you a little bit in drop. Maybe you can ask him to be like a free safety type role like Robert Williams is, but just a little bit less athletic. At least then now there's competition to keep Cornett on his toes, to force him to continue to develop his game. And that's just as important as having the depth behind him, because the last thing you want is somebody like Cornett that's had to claw for every piece of playing time he's got to all of a sudden be unencumbered because there's just not enough depth around him.
Yeah, and I think that was also part of the reason why the Celtics gave a two-way contract to Caboclo. So you've got Caboclo in the fold now. You've got Vonleh. You've got Bruno Caboclo on a training camp deal, basically. So they're going to see what's basically going to shake out after this, kind of throwing everything at a wall and seeing what sticks. So I don't exactly hate the move. I'm interested. I have no idea if he's actually going to stick, but I am interested to see how this shakes out. Right now, I think Boston, based on not using that TPE, they kind of have to figure out if they can find something on the market that's going to suit their needs. Like using the veteran minimum right now on a team that is supposed to be a contender and based on how much salary they already have in the books is a smart move. And I can't imagine that Vonleh is making a ton of money. They signed him to a one-year deal outright. So I guess I'm just kind of interested to see how it rolls out. And who knows, maybe he's developed his game a little bit in his time overseas. There's a really good possibility that he came back a more complete player, but there's really no way to know until we actually see this guy in a court because he hasn't played very much NBA ball.
Sorry, I went full screen then without knowing
It's
what you were
okay.
doing. So Caboclo for me is another guy where you can talk about developing his game overseas. He spent some time in France, then he went over to Brazil and spent some time in Brazil. Was putting up numbers in the Brazil league for Sao Paulo, but the biggest concern is as soon as he came back and it was in summer league production, he went from averaging 25 points a night in Brazil to 12 points a night in summer league. And then what I'm expecting is you shave off another 6 points there. So all of a sudden, Caboclo's a 6 point a night guy with some defensive limitations. I'm just not, the 3-point shot doesn't have me convinced at all. I don't expect Caboclo to be a guy that comes into training camp and earns himself a roster spot. Now, to say that, I was expecting him to earn himself a spot before Vonleh got picked up, and now I genuinely believe those two are going to be battling for a spot in the rotation next season, or at least on the roster, and it's going to be an either-or decision. Either we take Caboclo or we take Vonleh, and coming into it without having, we haven't seen them in preseason yet, we don't know which one of those guys are winning that battle because training camp isn't underway, but right now, I would expect that Noah Vonleh beats out Caboclo for that roster spot if it is between the two of them.
And I think that would be my prediction too. I think Vonleh had a better career so far. Obviously, not particularly great if he's playing overseas. And he's a former lottery pick, so clearly there's talent there. But he's also a little bit bigger than Bruno. And I feel like this is a running joke. This was something that I wasn't aware of until the Celtics signed him. But there's a running joke of Bruno Caboclo being 2 years away, right? I had no idea that this was a thing where they're yeah, he's 2 years away from being a complete player. And then it's 2 years past and it's it's another 2 years. So he's been 8 years removed from being 2 years away.
And you don't have that with Vonleh. And the thing with these lottery picks is there's just a little bit more basketball pedigree to them. You're picked in the lottery for a reason. Obviously, the weaker a draft class, the more that benefits you for being a mediocre NBA talent. Because if you're a mediocre NBA talent in a really weak draft class, you can look like you could be a high-end NBA talent. And it's hard because it's slim pickings. Now, Vonleh does have that pedigree. I think he's more of a long-term solution. There's still some upside there. He's still young. I'm not saying that he's ever going to be a primary aspect of a rotation that's contending for a championship. But I think that you can still develop him. And what we've seen from the Celtics is they're very good at putting players in roles that are clearly defined towards their skill set. And you need to give Udoka his flowers there, because he did it for Grant, he did it for Peyton, he did it for Al Horford. He's putting guys in specific areas that really suit their skill sets. And that's what made Robert Williams go from being a good defender to an all-NBA level defender. Is, hey, Rob, we want you as a free roaming free safety, because we know that you can recover to your man if they kick the ball out, but we also know that you can cover enough ground to be that weak side help defender and get a million blocks a second. So I'm expecting Vonleh to kind of benefit from that type of coaching, from that type of defined role. And there's also not going to be any expectations on him. You've got so many talented guys around you, so much defensive stability. You'll be in a rotation that could have at any point Marcus Smart, Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, or Dean up on the perimeter. You could have Al Horford anchoring the paint. You could have Robert Williams anchoring the paint. You could be playing next to Luke Cornett, that is a good drop defender and does recover well when guarding pick and rolls. At any given point, Vonleh can kind of lean into the defensive identity that the Celtics have and just look to use that to accentuate his own skill set. And that's important, because if he was a primary defensive guy on this team, you'd be screwed. Just having him as a plug and play guy that can earn a few minutes here and there, like, I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah, and I think you put it perfectly. This is a no pressure situation, especially for a guy who used to be a lottery pick. You're not asking to come in and be like a starter. The best season that this guy had was 2018-19 when he was with the Knicks, averaging 8.4 points, 7.8 rebounds, 1.9 assists every 25 for about 25 minutes a game. He's not going to see that kind of workload. So I'm interested to see like what he can do in like a very limited role. And ultimately, yeah, if he's getting a lot of minutes, you are up the creek. So hopefully that never comes to fruition. But point being is you don't need him to be anything special. He is bench depth. He is a guy that you can throw out there, and he's not going to completely tank your defense or completely tank your offense. And the Celtics have done certainly worse when it comes to their big men before. I mean, I think about Ennis Kanter Freedom, unsigned right now because he's not an NBA caliber player. And that was someone that the Celtics had on for most of their season last year. And during the regular season, you need to be able to lean on your bench. And if you're not able to, then you're going to gas out your starters. So as long as Vonleh can be at least a solid rotation piece off the bench for a few minutes every now and then when they need him, that's all. You just need someone who's going to be able to go out there and do what they're supposed to do whenever their name's called. And that's like what you're doing by bringing in these guys who are 25, 26, 27. You know, these are reclamation projects, but these aren't prospects that you need to quote unquote develop. These are guys that you're trying to put in a better position to succeed and trying to just coach them up a little bit. Clearly the talent's there if he was a lottery pick. Even if you think he might have benefited from like a weaker draft class, he's still drafted there for a reason. He's got skills that you can maximize.
Another thing that's got me interested in Vonleh as well, when you're doing the comparison between Vonleh and Caboclo, is Vonleh's played 339 NBA games. He's got 171 starts under his belt, played in 11 playoff games as well. Over those 339 games, he's averaging basically 6 rebounds a game. He's bringing size, he's bringing control of the glass. Caboclo was in the league for, 5 years? Played 110 games. Barely saw the floor, struggled to crack a rotation no matter where he went. So Vonleh clearly has more upside in the future. And as an NBA player, he's already shown he can be impactful at a certain area of the floor, which is rebounding, specifically on the defensive end. Coming in with that type of experience, 330 plus games in the league, coupled with the fact that you're adding without taking away, which is exactly what Brad Stevens said he wanted to do. This seems like a no-brainer pickup for me. You're not expecting fireworks from the guy. All you're asking is, when we need you, be ready. And you might average 6 minutes a game or 6 minutes per night over the course of the season. But at the end of the day, those 6 minutes could lead another team to giving you a deal where you could average 8 or 10. It's an opportunity that Vonleh has got in front of him. And the experience he's got, the pedigree he's got, I'm quite confident he makes the rotation this year. And I genuinely believe that he could end up giving you 2 or 3 games where it's like Vonleh kind of really out, like bunkered down on the defense and saved us.
And I think that's great. I think right now the Celtics just don't have a lot of bigs that they can turn to on the bench. And I think part of that is you traded away Daniel Theis. And as much as I liked Daniel Theis, he was overpaid for what you were getting out of him. So I think Vonleh gives you an opportunity to kind of see what you've got there. You've got someone who's a little bit younger. You've got someone who's a little bit more mobile. And he provides one specific skill set that Daniel Theis was solid at, but probably not as good at, which was defensive rebounding. And that can make or break games. And if you have someone that you can at least throw in there from off the bench that can give you something, that's a step in the right direction. I like the deal. Like it's not, you got to see how it works out in training camp. You got to see how it works out in preseason, but I certainly don't think that there's anything wrong with this. This is so low risk. You've got nothing to lose by bringing in a guy like this. He's not going to mess any of your books up. You don't have him signed long term. I'm interested to see how this plays out because it's easy to root for a guy like this. You know, he's hometown, he's local to Massachusetts. I just like to feel I'm sorry, I'm a sucker for like the homecoming narrative. What can I say?
You like the Disney aspect to this stuff, right?
Yes, of course.
The Jack Frost aspect where it's like, oh, he returns for one day and one day only, and it's magical.
No, one day at training camp.
I mean, you've mentioned Theis a few times, and like my thought on Theis has always been that Theis was great in a Brad Stevens system that was a bit more finesse based. It was a lot more skill based. Udoka's got these guys playing a bully boy type of basketball. It's a lot more physical. It's a lot more drive to the hoop and bully drive. Get that shoulder into your guy, force your way where you need to be. Theis isn't that guy. Theis is your pick and roll type center where he's very adept at pick and pops. He's very adept at slip screens and sealing guys off. And you use him in a skill-based system. He didn't work under Udoka because Udoka doesn't run that type. It's a lot of ram screens. It's a lot of single side pick and roll into a stagger. There's a lot more like physicality in the way Udoka asks his team to set offense up on the perimeter. And that just didn't fit Tyson. And as you said, couple that with the fact he's overpaid. He generally seems to have regressed a little bit from his final season in Boston. And I'm not saying Vonleh is an upgrade because he's not. Theis is probably still the better player here because he's more diverse. But Vonleh fits a very specific need of size, length, and rebounding with some weak side defense upside if you can get him in a role that suits him. And for me, that's fine. He's coming in on what's most likely a minimum deal. It's probably going to be non-guaranteed or it will become partially guaranteed once the season starts if you make the roster and there's not much financial commitment. And you get to see how it works out. At the end of the day, you're picking up a lottery pick that's got hundreds of games experience to replace Daniel Theis that just didn't fit what Udoka wants guys to do. And I think Vonleh will fit this system a little bit more due to that size and that physicality that he'll bring.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else I really have to say about Vonleh. I think that kind of sums
20
it up.
minutes. 20 minutes on Vonleh is enough, man. We got a bit of Daniel Theis in there. We broke our rule and spoke about Bruno. If anyone doesn't know what we're on about, that's an Encanto reference. And I'm telling you what, I mean, I've got a little one. Well, she's not little anymore, but we still watch pretty much all the new Disney movies. And I really liked Encanto. I didn't like the ending. I'm not going to drop spoilers, but I just thought, like, if you're going to make me watch an hour and 30 minutes or something, and then the one person that doesn't have abilities still doesn't have abilities at the end, and you're trying to give me some message that everyone can be special. You're living in a house full of people with abilities and you're the only one without. I don't care what message you're trying to send me. You're not special because everybody else is. So I was very annoyed at the ending, but the actual movie itself was solid. With that, if you've enjoyed this show, please click that like button, that subscribe button, leave a comment, and most importantly, if you haven't seen Encanto, go and watch it. Also, don't invest in a Noah Vonleh jersey because they're going to be null and void in about 6 months to 12 months. And I'm hoping by saying that, I'm jinxing myself and he has a really good season for Boston and sticks around long term. Anything you want to say before we let everybody get out of here, Tim?
Nah, I got nothing.
All right, then, deuces, everyone. Stay safe. Stay sassy. Stay sassy, San Diego.